Old School Lane Casual Chats is brought to you by oldschoollane.blogspot.com and is associated with Manic Expression, the Comic Book Cast, the Reopen Nickelodeon Studios in Orlando, Florida Facebook page, and for entertainment's sake. Everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of Casual Chats. I am Patricia, and I am here with a few special guests. For our returning guests, we have Jim Bevan. Welcome back, Jim.
Always good to be here, Patty.
And we have ourselves a brand new special guest. He is one of the members from the Chaplain Church Skype group call. We have Lily. So welcome, Lily.
Hello.
So today we're going to be discussing about the Metroid franchise. As of the time of this recording, it is the 30th anniversary of the franchise, and Nintendo has done a wonderful job of celebrating it. No, they haven't. So right before
have they?
So right before we discuss about the franchise, let's hear your earliest memories of Metroid. So Lily, as our special guest, why don't you start?
One of the games that I had. I never actually owned an N64. I always owned a Super Nintendo, and then I just moved straight to, like, a PlayStation. And the game I always played on my Super Nintendo was Super Metroid. Used to play this all the time, and I still did for a long time until I gave that, Super Nintendo away to my little sister last year. I mean, I've recently emulated it again, and it was really good. And, it is one of those things that just always captured my imagination. I really like the atmosphere.
Awesome.
Metroid.
How about you, Jim?
A little kind of similar to Lily. I started, my first experience was actually with the original Metroid on the NES. My cousin had it, and I would occasionally play it, but I was only like 3 at the time, so I was not able to do very well at it. Just play around because I thought it was cool. I liked the monsters. I liked the colors. Didn't really care about winning. But when Super Metroid came out on the SNES, that was when I gave that a shot and found myself really immersed in seeing how the series had evolved and how much more impressive it was.
Awesome. And as for me, I first got introduced to it in my cousin's house when I was a kid. He owned the game alongside with other classic games for the NES and the SNES. And then eventually, Super Metroid was one of the other games that he picked up, like around 95 or 96, and then I saw it and I was like really blown away because seeing from the original Metroid of how basic it was, and then moving over to Super Metroid, it was like extremely immersive, and it had so much variety in their stages and the music and the monsters and the bosses. It was just an incredible experience. And then around high school, I went and played it again. I emulated it, and I was even more blown away with the game, even after playing with the other games in the series, more specifically Zero Mission and Fusion, which I'm sure we'll get to later on. So now that we got that out of the way, I guess while we're still talking about the original Metroid on NES, I guess we can start off with that and then go into each game in chronological order. A lot less convoluted with their timeline than Zelda, that's for sure. So,
yeah.
Okay. So, for those who don't know what the first Metroid game is about, or maybe you've never played Metroid, it's basically that the Galactic Federation sends Samus over to planet Zebes, apparently is what is officially pronounced, not Zebes as I thought at first. And she goes over there and fights off 3 bad guys, which are Ridley, Kraid, and eventually Mother Brain. And yeah, I mean,
I must resist the urge to do the Levi Stubbs Mother Brain voice.
Oh no, not the Captain and the Game Master one.
Oh God.
I must resist. I will resist. I will show strength.
Thank you, because I'm not sure if our listeners will be able to seek out as many Q-tips and just, going over to soundproof rooms to hear the screeching and just abuse that voice was. I mean, it's like running nails through a chalkboard. Ugh. Anyway, so, I played the game, the NES game recently, and, a lot of people, regard Metroid as like one of the classic NES games, and I do agree, but I think in my personal opinion, for a lot of people who say, like, it's one of those games that still holds up, when going back to that and then playing Zero Mission, which is the remake of Metroid, I don't think it holds up as all the other classic NES games. What do you guys think?
I actually agree with that completely, because I personally think Metroid 1 actually holds up less than the original Legend of Zelda and Zelda 2. Because I can go back and replay Zelda and Zelda 2 in their original state. I cannot replay the original Metroid.
I think the biggest problem is that there's no map. When you're used to playing Super Metroid and then all the other games in the series, you're used to a map, and I get, the fact that maybe with Zelda, it doesn't have a map either, but it does show you an indication on where you are. And, for a lot of people, you can't, progress without knowing exactly where you are. And another thing that really bugs me is that you start off with 30 health points, and you don't start off with a full life bar, or in Metroid's case, like a full tank of energy. And it does get really frustrating at times. The controls are a bit stiff. You can only shoot up and down, and that's, not up and down, sorry. You can only shoot up and then left and right. And also, another thing is that you lose health pretty quickly, especially if you fall down a pit of lava or acid or something like that. And also, a lot of the areas look pretty much the same, especially if you're in deeper towards Norfair or Criteria. So that's why I get that it's a classic, and, I'm glad that it's going to be bundled up in the mini NES that's coming out this fall, alongside with, like, Mario and Zelda, but if I do recommend that you play the original Metroid game, then I recommend you play Zero Mission.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
I mean, you do have to forgive. You have to give a little leeway to Nintendo, because they were working with the limitations of the time. But yeah, it's just hard to imagine with how clunky it is. Like you said, no map. I get that you want to encourage exploration, but you could throw a little bit of a bone just so the players aren't constantly running back and forth getting lost. So I would definitely agree with you there. I also like the improvements they make too. Just some of the mechanics are smoother, and they even make the boss fights bigger. Like in the original Metroid, the initial fight against Kraid, he's just like he's almost like Bowser. But when you fight him in Zero Mission, you're fighting the giant Kraid.
Yeah, really exactly. From Super
Metroid,
Metroid,
feel the scale. Yeah, you feel the scale. You feel it's much more epic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also don't like the Brinstar theme in Metroid 1 as much as I do in Super Metroid. They're two completely different pieces of music.
I get what you're saying, yeah. I mean, the Metroid soundtrack is iconic, but I think that there are some songs that aren't as well known. I mean, I'm not too crazy about the NES version of Norfair compared to the GBA version of it.
Yeah, I can always agree with that one. But Brinstar and Criteria Surface, just always iconic, like, in terms of soundtrack.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, Kraid's theme, which a lot of people consider is like one of the best musics in video game history.
This I also have to give credit to for the Metroid series. It was one of the first games that I really felt helped use its music to build atmosphere.
It wasn't as lighthearted as, say, like Mario or Zelda. It was more darker and moodier.
Oh yeah, and that definitely helped. Well, and that's it needed to be, because I mean, you're stepping out of the fantasy realm of Mario and Zelda. You need something to fit that sci-fi aesthetic, that idea of being like, alone by yourself in space with hostile forces all around. You need that otherworldly eeriness.
Yeah, and like a lot of the designers for Super Metroid actually have mentioned this. Hell, Metroid in general. I've actually mentioned that they took a lot of inspiration from Ridley Scott's Alien.
You could definitely tell when looking at the levels of Metroid, and you can definitely tell with the way that the monsters are, and of course Samus being somewhat of a reference to Ellen Ripley. And then, of course, there's Ridley, the monster, named after Ridley Scott.
Yeah. And then you have even the Chozo statues, in a way, they do kind of resemble the space jockey when you think about it.
Yeah, they do, actually, yeah.
They have kind of a Geiger-esque design.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Yeah, and Ridley does look like, the director.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does, exactly.
I want to say, okay, we want to see if we can kind of try to, like, shove in elements to make it look a bit like a xenomorph without getting the lawyers on our case.
Oh, like Contra did?
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, of course, there was a lot of elements from movies and comics. I can see how it can become a major inspiration, especially with H.R. Geiger's more unique style of designing aliens, as opposed to like the stereotypical aliens that you would see in other sci-fi movies. Anyway, going into Zero Mission for just a quick second, I do like the additional things that they added into it, especially the gameplay features from Super Metroid, in which you have the super missiles and the shine spark, and you also have the addition of the wall jump, and also the additional ending in which you actually get to play as Zero Suit Samus, and you get to do a little bit of an infiltration mission to retrieve a ship to escape the planet. And then you've learned a little bit more information about the Chozo if you, explore the Chozo ruins. And there's even more of a backstory to Samus if you pick up the Metroid manga, which I always think of that manga. I know it's, I think it was considered, not canon from one of the developers or something, but I always consider that to be canon to the series. Definitely a lot more canon than Metroid Other M, which I'll get to in a minute.
What's Other M? I've never heard of Other M.
I think it was like some indie title or something. I don't know. When I first played Zero Mission, this was back in high school, and I already liked the original Metroid, and I loved Super Metroid, and playing Zero Mission was like an amazing experience to me. I mean, at the time, I didn't know, I didn't have any handheld games that much that drew me in like Zero Mission did. I mean, I'm sure there were others that came out during that time, but I was addicted to Zero Mission when it came out. And then I found out about the Metroid manga a few years later in college, and I really loved the expansion of the story. It's funny because I was doing a Let's Play over at the PlayStation channel with Tristan, Tom, and Nick, and they were talking about if Metroid ever had like a remake or maybe a possible animated series, they would kind of like to see it in the form of Mass Effect. And I was like, I could see that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Anyway, so any other stories that you have to say about the original Metroid or Zero Mission?
I actually really liked some of the story additions to Zero Mission too. Like, it gives kind of the Ridley fight context.
Yeah, definitely it does, because in the manga it explains about how Ridley and Samus became adversaries. Like when Ridley went over to planet K2L, and how he wanted to retrieve the source of energy that they needed for their ship, and how he attacked and killed all of the humans that were residing over there, including Samus's parents, and Samus was only 3 years old when it happened, and then the one thing that I can give that's the manga too, is that throughout the series, Ridley always comes back, and they're just saying, like, how does Ridley always come back when Samus kills him? And it's like, well, in the manga it explains that every time that Ridley kills humans, he eats their flesh, and he can be able to regenerate. Exactly. Thank you. He can regenerate, and or the space pirates come by and they pick up the remains of Ridley's body, and they help him regenerate his body, and that's how he's able to come back. And then later on, they would give him the mecha suit. Now that we have that out of the way, let's continue on to Metroid 2. Metroid 2. Go ahead.
I actually don't have any memories, but Metroid 2 is the funny thing. I keep meaning to play it, but there is a fan remake of it coming out soon.
Oh, it just came out today, actually.
Did it really?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just played it. I played a few hours of it, and it's amazing. I didn't want to stop playing. For those who don't know, a guy by the name of Dr. M64 for years has been creating a remake of Metroid 2 Return of Samus from the ground up, and it is out right now on his website. It's called Metroid2remake.blogspot.com. I'll put a link on the description box below. You have got to check it out. And I can just quickly say about my story of Metroid 2. To be quite honest, this is one of the Metroid games that I have the least memories of. I remember playing it in high school. As soon as I was done playing with Zero Mission and Fusion, I don't like it. I'm sorry, I really don't like it. I know a lot of people say, oh, it's a classic. There's some things about it that it added into the series, like it added in the spider ball, it added in the space jump.
The virus suit. The virus suit.
Various suits, yeah.
Various suit, my mistake.
That's okay.
I'm sorry, I mispronounced it. And they had to do that. They had to do that because they were working on the Game Boy Black and White, so they had to find a way to show a different suit without you relying on color.
Right, and it had the round metal shoulders, and apparently it was going to be called it was supposed to be called Barrier Suit, but because of a mistranslation from Japanese to English, it was called Various Suit, and it's been called that ever since.
Oh wow,
it stuck out more than Barrier, so they kept it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Makes sense to me. Yeah.
I mean, I know that there was a lot of things that it added into the series. Like the baby Metroid that is born in the beginning of Super Metroid, and the same Metroid that was kidnapped is the Metroid that was born at the end of the game when Samus went around killing the last remaining Metroids in its home planet SR388 when the Galactic Federation saw it as a threat. And I get it, but I don't like it. I mean, it doesn't have a map. And it's very linear. It's crammed. It makes sense that it's really crammed because it was on a Game Boy game. And I don't think the soundtrack is not memorable. The levels are not memorable. I just never really could get into it.
Nah, definitely something I think they could have, rather than put it out on the Game Boy, try to refine it and put it on the SNES.
I guess it makes sense for them to put it on the Game Boy because, it came out in it came out in 91. The Game Boy was only a few years old, and Gunpei Yokoi, who created the Metroid series, also created the Game Boy. So I guess they wanted to see if maybe they can have a Metroid game on the go. There were a lot of other games that were coming out on the go, like there was Castlevania, there was Super Mario Land, Tetris. So I guess they wanted to have their first party games, being able to put it out on the go, which it makes sense at the time, but nowadays, I would highly recommend that you check out another Metroid 2 remake, because until Nintendo comes along and says, we're going to make a remake of Metroid 2, this is the best way to play the game.
Oh, yeah.
Have any of you guys checked out the another Metroid 2 remake, whether it be the demo or just seen it online or something?
I've seen it online many times, and I got really hyped for it.
Same. I definitely will be checking it out because I missed out on the original because I didn't really have that much interest in the Game Boy. But this is definitely one that I'm looking forward to rectifying that mistake.
Yeah, me too. All right, now we can move over to Super Metroid, which I've mentioned this before on my blog site as well as various places in social media, but not only is Super Metroid my favorite Metroid game, but it's also my favorite game of all time. The reason why is because, as mentioned in the beginning, I was first introduced to it as a kid when my cousin rented it in Blockbuster, and then eventually my uncle picked it up. I was really blown away by it. And then eventually in high school, when I played it in the emulator, that's when I fell in love with the whole series again, and I just have this real personal connection to it. I always go back to it at least a few times a year, or maybe like a few times a month, to play the game and just, see if I can find out some secrets that I didn't know about without looking through a cheat or looking through a walkthrough or anything like that. And yeah, I mean, with Super Metroid, it takes place right after the second game. Samus drops off the Metroid baby over to the Ceres space station. They were under attack by Ridley, and she has to go back to planet Zebes, and she has to defeat these 4 different creatures. She has to fight Phantoon, Crocomire, Dragon, and Kraid, again from the first game. And there were so many things that were brought into this game compared to the 2 others. There was, not only the weapons, but there was also the areas to explore. It expanded from the first game. There was the music that was there. Just everything about this game was amazing. And of course, there was the final fight with Mother Brain, which is like one of the best fights in video game history.
Oh, by far, both in a gameplay standard and narrative standard, which I really... it's your call. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't played the game, and if you haven't played Super Metroid, then seriously, what are you waiting for?
Exactly. It's out on the Wii U Virtual Console. Please go check it out.
Yeah, I will definitely say Super Metroid, this is what set the standard, I'd say, for the series and how it plays. Well, not only how it plays, but in how it delivers and how it builds atmosphere using just its environment, using just its surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you start the game and you go into the lab and you see, you see the bodies of the scientists. That alone tells you right at the start.
Actually, is the first instance of blood in a Nintendo game.
Yeah, and well, I mean, I don't know about that because one of the first instances anyway. Because I think Mortal Kombat also. Well, no, technically you're right because Super Nintendo Mortal Kombat didn't have the blood.
It had sweat. Instead.
Yeah, sweat.
Yeah.
Watch out for that massive sweat. Ooh, scary.
Yeah. That's what I consider to be like one of the lasting imprints that the Metroid series has had, on the industry as a whole, in how you can use just your surroundings to tell a story, to convey an emotional, to convey a feeling. You don't have to rely on, long-winded text logs or cutscenes. Just have to design it well, set the atmosphere, and the players will know the mood you're trying to establish.
That's pretty true. Metroid is actually one of the main reasons I wanted to get into game design. The Super Metroid always captured every sense of emotion I had.
Yeah, I can see that because, going into the space station, you feel dread when you... Metroid dread, haha. Anyway, you feel a sense of isolation when you go in seeing the dead bodies from the scientists. And then when you see the baby Metroid and you're trying to pick it up, it's like, hey, why can't I pick this up? And you're all confused. And then Ridley comes along. He's like, oh no, Ridley's here. And then you try to shoot it down, and then all of a sudden the space station is about to self-destruct. And that's in the first 2 or 3 minutes of the game. It just makes you feel so much in emotion. And then when you reach Zebes, then it expands it even more. Like when you see the statues of the 4 creatures you have to defeat, and where you see the dead Galactic Federation soldier right near Kraid's lair, and when you meet up with the Ectogruns and the Dragoras teaching you how to do the Shine Spark and the wall jump, and when you see Mother Brain, rising from with a mechanical body after you defeat her for the first time, it's like there's so many things added to it, and not to mention also the levels. There's just so many things about this game that just brings it out. Go ahead.
Lower Norfair, the Down Freighter, all of those different areas, they're all unique and they all have their own sense of identity.
Yeah.
And they all have their own little people, their own like aliens.
Yeah, that's what I like too, because it really does make it feel more organic when there's when the characters feel unique to a setting rather than just copy pasting them.
Right. I mean, it could have. It could have easily been copy pasted. Like from one stage to another. It's like, we're going to have the same creature, but then, we're going to have it in a different color or something. The difference is that there's different strategies to it. Like, for example, like the bird-like creature that you thought it was a Chozo statue, and you defeat it as like one of the very first bosses. It comes back in much more later on, but the difference is that it's all gold, and then it does flips, it shoots out lasers, it shoots out those mechanical spheres, it does a lot of different things. I mean, it could have been the same boss again.
It's not just a simple palette swap. It showed, these creatures have variety, and you have to be willing to up your tactics, to change your tactics to defeat them.
Yeah, definitely. And throughout the game, you get the different beams, and you get the different missiles, and you have different ways of taking down your enemies, and you have to be able to think about what should I do in this part, or how should I be able to take down this creature with this many items that I have. With Metroid, you have to explore your surroundings, and you have to find as much items as you can. And sometimes it'll be a difficult task, or other times it can be really easy, especially if you have the X-ray visor.
Yeah, and also if you're willing to take the chance to explore and try to sequence break, which is another good addition that's been made, another good element of the Metroid series that's been around for quite some time.
Yeah, and because of that, it's where we got the introduction of speedrunners who try to beat this game as quickly as they can.
And then there's also the mod that flips Metroid on its side completely.
Oh, I've never seen that before.
So you got to learn how to wall jump quick.
Oh my!
That sounds interesting.
It is. It's also hard.
I can imagine. I've never played Super Metroid on its side before.
It's very, very hard.
I'll have to check that out.
So by on its side, you mean like everything's been rotated 90 degrees?
Everything's been rotated 90 degrees. You have to learn to wall jump very quickly.
Oh.
Wow. I gotta check that out, yeah. So yes, I can go on and on for a long time about this game, but we still have a lot to talk about, so we'll just move on. So
can I just say one last thing about Super Metroid?
Of course.
Who didn't get freaked out with Crocomire?
Oh yes, I remember when you shoot that thing all the way towards the acid pit, and then it just dissolves. Oh, that was so freaky.
Yeah. And then it comes back.
Yes.
Yes, it does.
For like a very short second.
You could consider it a jump scare, but it's just like it freaked me out. It shows you these space pirates are determined. They are gonna fight to their last breath to kill you.
Yeah, exactly. Good eye, Jim. All right, well. Yeah, for Super Metroid, Gunpei Yokoi wanted this to be the very last in the Metroid series because, Metroid just never really did well in Japan. I mean, it was critically acclaimed, but it didn't really get, much buzz as, say, Legend of Zelda Link to the Past or Super Mario World or any of the other RPGs that were coming out. America seemed to have liked Super Metroid a lot more than the Japanese, so... and then also, this was around when Gunpei was not doing well in Nintendo because he did the Virtual Boy, and then eventually he left, and he helped create the Wonder Swan, and then he sadly passed away in a car accident in '97. So, yeah, for the longest time, there were no Metroid games until 8 years later when we had 2 Metroid games coming out, which was Prime and Fusion. And I remember when Prime was first announced, and everybody was really negative at it. I remember with people saying oh, they ruined Metroid, it's going all first person, they're going to turn it into GoldenEye or Halo or something like that, because...
the Bob Chipman argument.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, I forgive me for taking a jab at it, but let's be honest, he deserves all the jabs directed at him.
Fair enough. Anyway, so, yeah, I remember just nobody was looking forward to this game, and it was done by a studio that nobody knew about. And, according to what I remember listening to in the game trailers retrospective on Metroid, they were trying their hardest to do these other games for Nintendo. Every single one of them got scrapped, with the exception of Metroid Prime. There was a lot riding on this. And then it came out, and then everybody loved it. And it's considered to be like one of the best games on the GameCube, let alone on the franchise. And sadly, I never got to play this game until college. So this was like years after the game came out. This was around when the third one came out.
I had an experience where I rented it from a library once, but I never actually finished it. Because my library used to have video games, yeah, that was a thing. And, I rented Metroid Prime, and I really liked it because it was basically Metroid, but in first person.
I was just going to agree. I'd say the first person aspect really, that was a very intelligent move, because that greatly added to the sense of immersion.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
And that made the atmosphere feel even greater, especially with all the little touches too. Like you have lightning flash, you actually see the reflection of Samus's face across the visor.
Oh yeah, that detail always blew my fucking mind.
That was one of my favorite things as well. The one thing that I really do like about it is that every single place around Talon 4 felt like a purpose. I mean, every single place you went to, there was something there for you to explore. And the one thing that I really do not like about Metroid Prime was collecting all those, hidden artifacts. I never really got into it. I understood that it was part of the story in which, Samus needed to explore Talon 4 just so she can be able to defeat Metroid Prime. I get that, but I felt that took away from, the experience. It's like, you were forced into this task of, first you were just exploring the place. At first, the game began with Samus, following a distress call from this laboratory, and then, Meta Ridley came along and was escaping from Samus after she lost all of her abilities and landed in Talon 4. But, yeah, the whole collecting of the artifacts never really got into the story. I mean, at least the ones that you were scanning anyway.
Yeah, that was Retro's misstep there. I mean, I appreciate the attempt to do a little more world building, but it just didn't integrate well. And it went against, how it had been done before, where you could just get the sense of things from the world around you. Here you had to actively go out of your way, and basically, it did feel like it just didn't feel natural. But, it could have been worse. You could have been constantly encountering NPCs who would bombard you with exposition.
Yeah, exactly. It could have been a Chozo statue that you had to approach, and then it would probably said, Samus, go over to this area. This area has this and this and that. We need you to find these artifacts for this and this and that. It's like, that would have been a nightmare.
Yeah. Now, to their credit, though, I did like the scan function. That felt organic because, you think with her suit, she would have some kind of feature like that to give her information on unfamiliar territory.
Yeah, I always liked the scan visor for her to gain more knowledge about the creatures and the plants and just the environments that she was exploring. And then when you reach over to the observatory, to learn about the different planets as well, and including Zebes, which was also featured in the holograms, which was actually really neat. And also, the one thing that was my favorite in Metroid Prime was that you found the Chozo statues, and you get to see more of Samus's backstory about how when they were in Talon 4, they were told of a prophecy about, the Phazon, and how, someone was to be called in to stop the evil that is happening and stuff like that, and it hinted towards Samus. And then also, not to mention about the Space Pirates logs, in which they would talk about how Samus's suit was unknown and that it was a major threat and that she was still mysterious despite them fighting her 100 times or so. So yeah, there was just a lot of things to learn about that.
Yeah. Very frustrating, though, for the people who did want to get 100% completion.
Yeah, exactly. I feel you, Gerard.
Yeah, and actually, I feel that's something that is kind of lost now, because when these games came out, you had to put in the effort to get everything just to see that little secret at the end. But now we're in the age. But now, thanks to YouTube, you don't really have to bother anymore.
That's kind of sad, to be quite honest.
It's really sad because I actually enjoyed figuring things out for myself a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. The one thing that I don't do when playing a new video game is that I never get a walkthrough. Unless a game frustrates me so much that I have to pick up a walkthrough to find out what am I supposed to do, then I just play the game blind, because that's what makes the game fun. It's more of an experience for you to discover something as opposed to like looking it up on a walkthrough or watching it on YouTube.
I have to agree with you there, and I'd say that's a good attitude. You know, I don't condemn, I don't bash anyone who has to use walkthroughs or guides, but you know, I'd say you have to at least try to put in an effort first and wait until you get just go as far as you can until you get truly stuck, until you've tried everything and still can't find a way out.
Right.
Yeah, because I'm actually playing through Axiom Verge, and it's infamous for being really, really, really easy to get lost in. But the thing is, I refuse to look at walkthroughs right now.
I don't know. Axiom Verge, I don't know if you want to talk about that later. We could talk about the legacy Metroid has had.
Oh yeah, we can also talk about that and Shadow Complex and Guacamelee.
Yep.
Yeah, all that different stuff after we get done with the elephant after fusion.
I'll talk about that. Anyway, Prime, right, Prime. So, another thing that I really do like about Prime was that the soundtrack of Prime is incredible. It is up there with Super Metroid as like one of the best soundtracks in the Metroid franchise. I mean, from time to time when I'm busy working on, one of my newest videos or something, I always play Metroid music in the background, and Prime is like one of my favorite soundtracks to listen to.
Oh yeah, a lot of great new tracks and a lot of great remix tracks too. Like how they took Ridley's Hideout theme and turned it into Magmar Mountain, and it's just booming. It really makes you feel like you're in the depth of a great mountain.
Yes, I agree. And let's see, and also that fight with Mecha Ridley, as soon as you're done collecting the artifacts, is amazing. Even though that he can be really, really frustrating at times, especially when he protects his chest when you shoot him. It's very, very fun. Like, when you switch between the different beams, and then when Ridley flies around up in the air and you're trying to shoot him down and use your missiles and stuff like that, it's like, that is an amazing fight.
Yeah. And that's part of what you look for in a good boss fight, and especially in a game where you're collecting so many powers. You want a boss that tests your mastery of all of them.
Yes, I agree.
Rather than just using like the one specific item they're weak to.
Exactly.
That's kind of what I always dislike about Zelda.
Oh, you mean the fact that you get an item, you use that same item on the boss.
Yeah, that. I dislike that a lot.
It takes away the fun of the strategy. I don't have any diss on Zelda, if you're wondering, people. I just find that to be a bit of an issue at times. Anyway, continue, Lily.
But like in Metroid, you have to use a variety of different tactics, like, missiles and patterns and all this different stuff, and it's just super cool. And, you had, like with Crocomire is not killed by one specific item. You just have to pay attention to what he's doing.
Think of it like the Dodongo boss from Zelda, except more threatening and more at stake, because Crocomire is stepping towards you, and then in the background, that's when you see the pool of acid, and you know that that's where you can be able to shoot him down. And then also in the back, there's spikes, so you have to be careful on what you have to do. And also, if you run out of missiles, then I don't know what to tell you.
Again, getting your clues from the environment.
Instead of just, I got the boomerang. I guess I fight the boss with the boomerang. Yep, I fight the boss with the boomerang. Sweet.
Yay.
Yay.
All right, well, you know what? I'm going to leave Fusion for the second last, because I'm sure you'll know why. So let's go over to Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. And out of the Metroid Prime trilogy, this is the one that I played the least, mostly because I find it to be so difficult. And for those who don't know, the game is basically where she lands on the planet. Well, her ship crashes on the planet Ether, and she finds a whole bunch of the Galactic Federation dead. She meets up with a creature named the Luminoth, and the leader of the Luminoth talks about how the Ing had split their planet into two, and that she has to explore the light side and the dark side so she can be able to fight off the Dark Aether. The Dark Aether, yes. And basically where they got the inspiration from Link to the Past to make this kind of game, and it's fine and all, but I just find it to be really difficult. Like, switching between the two worlds is fine, but the thing is that Dark Aether hurts your energy, and then you have to reserve some of the ammo that you collect from the creature so you can fight off the creatures from the other side, and then, oh jeez, I can go on forever about how much of a hassle it was to fight the Spider Guardian and the Boost Guardian.
I think most of the time when I was playing, I was getting lost so much in Metroid Prime 2 that the hints were coming on almost all the time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of... Echoes, what I remember most about it was that it was really easy to get lost, and it just kind of frustrated you, and you just didn't want to really continue playing, so sort of turned off.
I definitely had that issue where I'd get frustrated because I was dying or getting lost so much, and I'd put it down and not come back to it for like a week or two.
And not to mention that for some reason this game just doesn't have as many save states.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like a Metroid game either.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, you're going to ancient temples to basically try and reignite some mystic power that's native to this planet. That's not what Samus does.
No, and the fact that she was collecting the 9 Sky Temple keys, it's like, this isn't what Samus does. This isn't Zelda.
That would be like taking Star Fox and stranding him on a planet full of dinosaurs. And
No, we don't talk about that.
I'm sorry, but I just had to make the example because I mean I understand. Okay, yeah, I can understand what they want to do. Like you said, getting a little inspiration from Link to the Past. You know, I like the idea. Fine, venture outside the comfort zone a bit, but you know, you still have to keep it somewhat grounded in the series' roots.
Yeah. I actually
because when you go from sci-fi and you basically jam in fantasy elements this hard, then it just comes off as so unbelievably jarring.
Exactly, and considering that, similar to the Zelda series, you know, I know that they would do this in Fusion, but Samus also has another doppelganger of herself in the form of, you know, Dark Samus. And the SAX in Fusion made sense because that came from the X-Parasite, which cloned her suit. The Dark Samus, on the other hand, I just never really get. And I know that she became like a main antagonist in 3 as well, but, you know, with SAX, it makes a lot more sense. And it was able to play off the fear and the tension in the game of Fusion. With Metroid Prime 2, however, you only got to approach Dark Samus only a handful of times, and then you have that major fight in the end, and that was pretty cool, especially with the time limit, and you had to fight the creature as fast as you could. But other than that, I think that this is one of my least favorite in the series.
Yeah, it had some pretty lackluster bosses as well.
And overall, I feel like Metroid Prime 3 did the concept of, like, the dark side a little bit better.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and the one thing that they did try to add in, which I understood why they had to add it in, was that they added in a 2-player mode, which I never used.
I don't understand how it would work, is the thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I know they were trying to do something different to it. I mean, I can understand, but having it like a third-person shooter where you're trying to take down your enemies and then you're trying to collect like these little orbs or something, I mean, yeah, that doesn't really feel like Metroid.
You can't blame them for, you know, trying to experiment at least.
True.
It could have been worse. Could have been, you know, could have taken out all of the sci-fi elements and just had Samus building cars to get around the planet.
Must you continue talking about franchises that take too many chances and alienate them? I mean, let's see, Star Fox and now Banjo-Kazooie? Really, Jim?
God.
I'm sorry, I had to.
It's okay.
Anyway, let's talk about something else. All right. Pinball. Anybody have anything to say about the Metroid Prime pinball game?
It was good pinball, I'll say that.
Yeah.
It was pinball, yes. So
It was pinball.
Pinball,
It's
yeah.
pinball, only, but you just don't expect Roger Daltrey to opera about it.
Well, I don't have anything to say about it. It's just pinball. All right, Metroid Prime Hunters. This is the only one I've never played before.
I've never played it either. I've heard good things about it, and I've heard really good things about the multiplayer, but I doubt there are any multiplayer servers up anymore, and I've just never gotten to playing it.
Yeah. I've never got around to playing it either. I know that the multiplayer was like the one thing that I did hear a lot of people liking about the game, but I've never got around to it. So I'm sorry, I can't talk about this game. Corruption. Now, this one I really do enjoy. Similar to Fusion, it was a tad bit on the linear side, and this was actually one of the very few. This was like the first time in the series in which they added voice acting, and I liked it. I actually do liked it. I liked it, and I liked the other bounty hunters as well, especially Rundus, and I like the way that it was able to conclude the series in which the Phazon spread around multiple planets, and then you had the Phazon ships, the Leviathans, and it corrupted everybody. And then Samus has to go around the different planets to try to see if she can find her missing colleagues. And the one thing that I really did like about the game was that it was able to take the first-person controllers that, a lot of people were complaining like it wasn't going to work like the Conduit, and it was able to make it fun.
Yeah, it was a little difficult, a little tricky at first going from the GameCube controls you used to the Wii remote controls, but it translated. It was a smooth run once you got accustomed to it.
I got used to it pretty quickly.
I really like the environments in Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, and I also really like how it kind of added almost a cinematic element to everything Samus did that we considered kind of mundane. Like, just, talking in her ship or whatever.
I mean, the one thing that I did really like about it is that, just like you were saying before, it did give like a bit of a cinematic experience. And another thing that I really liked about it was that, it was able to add in some additional characters. Like, I mean, they tried to do that with 2, but, with 3, they were able to add in the general. They added in the 3 different, they added in 3 bounty hunters, and they, and they also added in the computer, the Aurora unit, which, according to what I remember from in the game, that they were trying to hint that was going to be like the next version of Mother Brain, but then, that never progressed any further because then they decided to make it non-canon. So, which sucked, but you know what, I mean, I'm not going to complain too much about it. But other than that, a lot of people complained about it was too linear and they didn't like the controls, but I do enjoy the game for what it is, and I like it as like one of the best that came out in the series.
Oh, definitely. I'd say it's probably a pinnacle for the series, and I do love how it gives Samus a more personal stake in her mission because she's trying to free her fellow bounty hunters from the effects of the Phazon.
Yeah, and that ending though.
Yes, that ending. Yes, I agree.
It was pretty great.
Oh. It was a nice way to close the trilogy, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
I really didn't get the part with the fluffy bunnies though. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, you should play the game all the way through.
Yeah. If you don't find the fluffy bunnies, that means you didn't get 100% completion.
Oh God.
I'm sure you'll figure it out when you play the game.
Yep.
All right. Okay, now we can talk about Fusion. So Fusion takes place right after Super Metroid, and and after the Metroid Prime trilogy, if we want to follow that canon. And it focuses on Samus, who is exploring SR-388 after the Metroids have been eradicated. And, she was attacked by the X-Parasite, and they bring her into the ship. They cure her with the last remnants of the baby Metroid, and then her body basically just gets transformed into having Metroid DNA. Similar to how Ripley's body was transformed with the alien DNA in Alien Resurrection. And the one thing that I do like about Fusion was that it added in the most story of the entire franchise up until that point. And they also introduced Adam Malkovich, who, was sort of like a... kind of like a higher up to Samus, and she respected him, and she had, thoughts about him, and then it kind of reminded him, she was reminded about Adam and the computer, who was the one who was giving her the missions. And, a lot of people may have complained, like, oh, this is just nothing but exposition dumps on the franchise that didn't really need it, but it actually played into the story.
Yeah, and it played into a pretty impressive plot twist at the end.
Yes, exactly.
A good plot twist.
It was a really good plot twist, I do agree. And then there's the SAX, which I was pretty frightened of the SAX when it first was revealed.
Same. This is one of those things, it's like the DACA from Prince of Persia, just this thing that is constantly following you, constantly after you, constantly trying to kill you, and yet you don't know when it will show up. I mean... Yeah, I was recently replaying Fusion before we did this podcast because it's my favorite game in the series. And you look back on it now, yeah, the moments you encounter them, they are scripted, but still, just that first time you're playing and when the SAX comes up, you are terrified. You know you need to run or hide or it is going to kill you.
Exactly. I mean, one or two shots and you're done. It was able to improve a lot of the stuff from Super Metroid, in which when you do the Shine Spark, it no longer hurt you, or when you're able to combine your missiles with the Ice Beam, because Samus was no longer able to use the Ice Beam anymore because she had the Metroid DNA. Also, when you explored, the ice room for the first time and you see Ridley's dead, frozen body, and then the Ridley X comes along, and then it starts attacking you. And then, of course, the one mission, the one monster that I do remember from Fusion was the Nightmare.
Oh, God, yeah. You go into the Arctic region, you see its silhouette just flying around in the background, and you hear that unearthly moan, and you realize this thing is coming for you. You're going to have to fight it soon, and you don't know what it's going to be. You just know it's going to be terrifying.
The music in Fusion is not my favorite in the series, but the one thing that I really do like are the sound effects, and I do like the fact that it does give you that bit of urgency whenever something happens.
Oh, yeah. It's a great... I don't think that much of the music either, to be honest, but, when the audio becomes deeper and low and, more bass heavy when SAX is near you, then it sends a shiver up your spine.
Agreed. Any others to say about Fusion right before we move on to...
Fusion was actually one of the first GBA games I got. I really liked it. It's good. I don't have much else to say about it. It's not like Super, where I can go on about it for a very long length of time.
All right, well, now that we got that out of the way, let's go into Other M.
Oh, no.
Okay, let's... Go ahead.
First big question. Who thought it was a good idea to give the series to the guys who make Dead or Alive?
Oh, no. All I know is Other M makes me fucking angry.
All right, let's get this out of the way, shall we? Metroid Other M. For those who don't know what that's about, it features Samus finally being recovered after her fight against Mother Brain, and the Galactic Federation comes along into the bottle ship, and she meets up with all of her colleagues, including Adam. And
Also, babies.
yes, lots and lots and lots of babies.
There's a theme of motherhood in this game that they are not subtle about in the slightest.
The bottle ship is called a bottle ship because it looks like a baby's bottle, and she answered the baby's cry. Oh.
The subtitle is an anagram of mother.
I have nothing to say.
I wouldn't have even done that.
Did they have to be so blunt? Did they have to be so blunt?
I don't know.
Oh, yes, they are that serious. I think we're done with our crying right now, so even my dog doesn't even want to talk about this anymore. Okay, so now that we got the subtle message of babies and mothers and so
It's
Samus,
the baby's cry. It's like it was calling for me. I explained to Adam the circumstances that brought me here.
Oh yeah, that's another thing that we can point about. What the hell did they do? They give Samus a voice, and they give her such a bland, monotone, naive performance. I mean, seriously.
I know what they were trying to do. They were trying to copy off.
Voice actress.
They were trying to copy off the Japanese version. I get what they were trying to do. Because in the Japanese version, her voice is stoic and serious, and they were trying to do the same thing, but it comes out as bland and monotone and boring.
Yeah.
So whiny.
It's very difficult to not get stoic. To try and have a character come off as stoic and not lifeless.
Now, listen, I don't mind the fact that Samus talks in this game. I know everybody was complaining about that, but that wasn't the problem. I mean, when they gave Jennifer Hale the opportunity to voice some things for Samus, that was fine. Even that content in which, that she did that narration for the first game, I didn't mind that.
I'm just glad they didn't bring Jennifer Hale back, because I would hate to see her having to read that horrible dialogue.
Especially if she did it in her Commander Shepard voice, talking about the baby, and this was meant for me, or Adam, or why should I do this, or I was acting like a kid when,
The use of missiles are authorized. You can use your fire suit. I
can go on and on and on about that stupid thing that they added in which the only way that Samus can unlock her weapons is if Adam tells her to, not by exploring like in the other games.
That's unbelievable bullshit.
The part is, the reason they give, it makes no sense for the Varia suit.
Oh no!
Because the reason they give is that Samus's weapons could easily kill humans. Why does Adam have to authorize the use of the Varia suit?
Yeah. And here's another big thing. This totally ruins the relationship that was supposed to have been established between Samus and Adam in Fusion and in the manga.
Exactly, because she sees Adam as a father figure. She sees him as a person that she looked up to because he was her superior. But in Metroid Other M, she sees him as like a love interest. It's like, where did this come from?
I know. I'm thinking about. I remember what Yahtzee said when he declared it one of his worst games of 2010. They gave Samus Aran a voice just so she could simper at all the boys. They turned one of gaming's toughest female icons into a shrieking mimsy in a submissive relationship with a dick and a fancy cap.
Yeah, and the worst part is she has PTSD, but not the type of PTSD she actually has in all the other games, where she flies into rage and kills Ridley.
Oh, yeah. Fuck. Okay, I want to clear this for anybody who's listening to this right now. Samus has gone through PTSD before in the Metroid manga when she approaches Ridley for the first time. But there are two accounts. Yeah, exactly. But there are two accounts for this. Number one, she was 14 when she went through PTSD when approaching Ridley. And the reason why was because this was the first time that she saw Ridley since, Ridley killed her parents. Number two, the Chozo taught Samus to hold back her emotions so that she can become the perfect warrior. When she was suffering from seeing Ridley, the creature that killed her parents, and her being taught to hold back her emotions, after all this time, I mean, I wouldn't know what to think if I was going through a situation like this.
Yeah, it turned her into this mess in the manga, and that made sense there because it was her first time encountering him and all that different stuff. But
Yeah.
like in Other M, she's encountered him multiple times, and that scene makes no sense when you see how she fights Ridley, where she puts her fucking arm cannon in his mouth and blasts his head off.
I mean, that happened in Metroid Prime 3, in that cutscene where Samus puts, her arm cannon into Ridley's mouth, but she did that, 4 times, and that's not how Ridley dies. Ridley dies when Samus approaches, him for the second time and they fight.
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't mind the whole, the arm cannon in his mouth and then blast his head off. I mean, the only problem I have with it is that it followed such a quote-unquote dramatic scene. It just, God, fuck Other M.
Oh, jeez. I've tried so hard over the years to find something good about Metroid Other M, but,
Other than it looks good.
It looks nice. Sure, it looks nice, but when you compare it to the Metroid Prime trilogy, I mean, it's a different design choice, but I don't think it's as detailed or as colorful or as atmospheric as the Prime trilogy, or heck, even the original Metroid games.
It actually looks really cartoonish and really immature compared to the other Metroid games.
Yeah.
Like, it looks like an anime as opposed to, an HR painting.
I mean, Team Ninja,
Yeah. Hey, just be glad at least they didn't give her jiggle physics. That's...
Also, why did they make Metroid a beat 'em up? I don't understand.
That's like the equivalent of making Final Fantasy first-person shooter.
Yeah,
or a third-person shooter, starring the one guy no one really liked in Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, as time goes on, and as I try to find something good about Other M, I just can't. I'm not too crazy about the gameplay. I'm not too crazy about the directions of the story that they wanted to do. I'm not too crazy about the additional characters. I'm not too crazy about that bird creature that eventually turns into Ridley, and the fact that Madeline Bergman turned out to be the revived Mother Brain or whatever. It
was so dumb.
Yes.
Dumb.
I think that should just be the box blurb for Metroid Other M. So dumb.
Yes, exactly. We're gonna probably, if anybody who does Photoshop for games, put that in GameStop. Metroid Other M, it's so dumb. Rated T for teen. Anyway, you know what? I'm done. I'm done talking about that game. Okay, let's talk about Federation Force. Now, at the time of this recording, the game hasn't come out yet, and I remember when I first saw it at the Nintendo Championships last year, and I thought, this was before they called it Metroid Prime Federation Force. This was when it was called Blast Ball, and I saw I remember when I first tweeted this, I said it looks like Metroid Prime if it was a soccer game. And what do you know? They announced it as a spin-off to the Prime series. And I remember that this was like one of the least liked videos on YouTube, the trailer. And I remember when everybody was just going so crazy. There was even a petition that somebody created of them wanting to have the game canceled. They went that far with it. And I wrote an article about this last year about saying, just calm down, people. It's a spin-off series. It's like Pinball and Metroid Prime Hunters. It's not an official game in the series. Just, if the game is fun, then let's have it be fun, and let's just not worry about it. I mean, Kirby's done so many games with spin-off titles, and that turned out well. And also, there are so many games in Nintendo's lineup that hasn't had a sequel in so long, like F-Zero. When was the last time we had an F-Zero game?
How long have we been waiting for a new Star Tropics?
How long? And for Star Fox, we had to wait like almost a decade for a new game. At least for 20 years, that one that was good.
Well, excellent point. It's still just a shame though that Nintendo isn't doing anything with the core series.
Yeah, I mean, with the failure that Other M did at the, with critics and viewers, and it didn't even sell that well. So I take it that they think that, people don't like the Metroid series, so let's just focus on the other franchises. It's like...
Yeah.
It's like, no, we love Metroid, we just don't like that.
Yeah.
That is an abomination.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's just too bad that, what was it? Next Level Games... They were going to do a Metroid game. They were going to do a 2.5D Metroid game for the 3DS, but then that got scrapped because they wanted to focus on Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon.
It's a shame. I mean, if Nintendo wants to license out the property, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to find someone who'll do it right. I mean, who's making the new Shantae game again?
The new one.
Way Forward. Way
Forward. There you go.
Yeah,
Thank you. Way Forward. That's right.
He also made
give them
DuckTales HD.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, give them the license. Let them put their spin on a 2D Metroid.
I would love that.
Yeah, or hell, you want to take it deeper? Give it to Obsidian. Let them make an action RPG.
Oh, that would be so good.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Like a first-person action RPG, like Prime.
Yeah, I mean there are talented teams out there. You can do that. Don't blame the series just because for some reason
blame the guys you got who are praised for jiggle physics and literally nothing else.
Yes, you look in the mirror, Nintendo. Look in the mirror, then you will see the problem. Yeah. Don't focus on the gimmicks for the NX or whatever you're going to call the new system. Just get back to making good games.
Exactly. I guess that we can wrap up this podcast with talking about the other games that Metroid inspired. So, you were talking about Axiom Verge, Lily. Why don't you talk about that?
Axiom Verge is a game I got recently, like, literally just yesterday. And I've been playing it, like, 6 hours straight today. And, I'm not very far into it, but it really does remind me a lot of Super Metroid. But it kind of has a geeker art style compared to Super Metroid.
Yeah, I think that's what they were going deliberately for, to try and give you the impression of this otherworldly style.
And the best part is, this was all made by one guy.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And he worked on this for like 5 years, and it really shows, because it's a really well-polished game.
And, of course, not only did it inspired, Axiom Verge, but there was also Shadow Complex, there was the Strider remake.
Another one.
Ori and the Blind Forest.
Mm-hmm. Elysian Tale.
Love that one. And another game made by only one person.
Mm-hmm.
Teslagrad is pretty interesting.
Teslagrad, the Swapper.
I haven't played that one yet.
Aquaria.
Aquaria is good, too.
Yep.
Song of the Deep, if you're into that kind of thing.
Aquaria, I think, is a little better than Song of the Deep. La Mulana.
The Castlevania games after Symphony of the Night.
Oh, you got to wonder just how, that it's because Castlevania started aping Metroid style that we have Metroidvanias to begin with. Because that really helped expand the popularity. I mean, heck, even right now, Iga's spiritual successor, Bloodstained, it's going to be another Metroidvania.
I'm really looking forward to that one.
I actually have seen, gameplay footage of that, gameplay demos of the creator playing it. It's good.
Yeah.
It is exactly what I wanted.
Yeah. Well, when you look at Metroidvanias, they're kind of becoming the new go-to for first-time indie developers. Oh, one other thing that came up, not a Metroidvania in the traditional sense, but at the start we were talking about how the Metroid games drew inspiration from the Alien franchise.
Yeah.
And Alien Isolation does
a lot of inspiration from Metroid.
Exactly, including having areas that you can't access until you get the right tool, like a welding torch. So it all comes full circle.
Oh, Dark Souls was also influenced by Metroid.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about Dark Souls.
So yeah, I mean, you can see what massive impact that Metroid have left to the gaming industry. And it's funny because, for a long time, Metroid was just one of those franchises that was like third next to Mario and Zelda. But then as time went on, people were able to get a lot of the core elements of Metroid and able to put that into other games, and then they became massive in their own right.
Yeah. I guess even if even if the series itself has seen better days, its legacy will always have a lasting impact.
Exactly, which is why
I always like that picture of Samus sharing the little cupcake, with Metroid as.
Oh, that's so cute! Yeah.
Zelda is having its big 25th anniversary blowout. The Metroid just is wearing a party hat with a little cupcake for Samus.
I remember that picture 5 years ago when Zelda and Metroid were celebrating their 25th anniversary, and I just retweeted a picture of Samus going into a room where there's a Chozo statue, and then the Chozo statue has a banner that says "Happy Birthday" on it.
I always loved Metroid. I have a soft spot for it. And
too.
If there's a new Metroidvania, even if the quality of it is a little dodgy and it has that sci-fi aesthetic, I will play it. Always.
Yeah, I do have a very soft spot for Metroid as well. It's one of my all-time favorite franchises, and I wish that it would get more attention and credit, how everybody goes crazy over Zelda. And, I know that, it's not going to be as talked about compared to Zelda because, Zelda has a much bigger legacy and a much bigger dedicated fan base, but I mean, I'm hoping that someday, whenever the new Metroid comes out, that isn't Federation Force, I hope that it'll come out and I hope it'll be able to impress and get a whole bunch of people excited, just like it did before. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens,
Also, as great as Breath of the Wild looks, let's hope the new Metroid doesn't go that route.
I can see where you're coming from. All right, well, any other final words to say about it right before we go?
Much I can say.
Everyone should play every Metroid game ever.
With one exception.
Yes, with one exception.
Except just pretend that one doesn't exist. Just act like it's kind of not a thing. Also, don't mention it in front of Metroid fans because it triggers a special kind of PTSD.
Yes. Yes, we apologize for any bad memories this has stirred up in you, Patty. Please try to keep the body count low.
I will try. All right, so that's it for this episode. Let's do some plugs and self-promotion. So, Jim, any upcoming stuff?
I recently posted an article on Manic Expression outlining my favorite episodes of the Real Ghostbusters animated series, and I'm currently working on an article on my picks for the 10 best original game soundtracks, and yes, there will be a Metroid title on there. Okay, awesome. Do you have anything, Lily? Any social media for people to find you at, or anything like that?
I can be found at the Lil of Ash. Excuse the name and picture. I like to have fun. And I might be doing videos in the future about video games.
Okay. And as for me, I just recently posted an episode of From Pilot to Final Product on Rugrats, and I'll be continuing to do an entire month on the 3 original Nicktoons. And by the time that this comes out, I will be out of town for a couple of days, so I'm going to have to put the month's worth of content on hold, but trust me, I have some awesome things coming, so stay tuned for that. Alright, that is the end of this episode of Casual Chats. Jim, Lily, thank you so much for joining.
Glad to be here. Oh, and before I forget, Mother Brain's gonna get you, Patricia! I couldn't hold out any longer.
Well, thank God that you held it in the end. Anyway, so please let us know in the comments below if you're still alive of your favorite Metroid games. Did you like the 2D games or did you like the 3D games? Let us know. I hope to see
Or are you one of the rare people who liked that which shall not be named?
Or that too, sure. I mean, I'm open to people liking stuff that I'm not too crazy about, that's fine too. Alright, well, that's it for this episode, so see you next mission.